Intermittent fasting, does it work? You've sent loads of questions asking me to do a video on this topic, and I'm so excited about finally getting to it. You've seen guys like Hugh Jackman talking about this publicly, so let's go. So guys, what is fasting? Look, this is not a new concept. People have been fasting for thousands of years, for both religious reasons and food scarcity reasons. If you don't have any food, you can't eat, right? So this concept was really popularized into a term called intermittent fasting. And that's come off the back of things like the 8-hour diet, which was released. And this was a book about intermittent fasting. So just get with the concept that it's not a new theory. So how is intermittent fasting any different? Well, look, for me, I've been really worried about talking about this topic for a long period of time. And that comes back to the fact that as a dietitian, I'm completely against diets. Guys, diets don't work. They are a silver bullet and a way for people to get fast weight loss, which ends up backfiring them later down the track. I think intermittent fasting for me is a little bit different. And the reason is it talks about the timing of food, the timing of when you should eat, and the timing of when you should fast. It never tells you what exactly you should eat, and for that reason, it's not a diet, it's an eating pattern. So, does intermittent fasting actually work? I can see a lot of you sitting there going, oh man, what happened to this 6 meals a day thing that everyone in the health sphere used to project? Yeah, you know what? There's a new body of science now suggesting really that intermittent fasting does really work. So why would someone actually do intermittent fasting? Well, of course, the major reason is for weight loss and weight management. That's the primary reason why this topic has become so popular in dieting circles. But there is a lot of science now which actually supports intermittent fasting for a host of different other lifestyle conditions. And these range from diabetes management right through to longer life expectancy. The science is really picking up. In fact, just last year I went to a symposium at Sydney University that really showed and proved how successful intermittent fasting can be in treating a whole lot of both acute and chronic conditions. And like I said, the body of science is really going through the roof now. So how does fasting actually work? Well, look, before we get to that, let's first address why this 6 meals a day concept is all of a sudden on the back burner. The major reason there is that the 6 meals a day recommendation provided to by most people in health circles was based on the fact that if you eat more regularly, you were most unlikely to overeat at any one meal. And so by doing so, your blood sugar would never drop so low that you'd need to gorge. So the idea was that by eating consistently, you'd be in the long term better off. So fasting is completely the opposite. Have a think about it this way. If you cut your meals down to just 2 meals a day, for example, even if those meals are much higher in calorie content compared to a 3, 4, 5, or 6 meal split, then overall it's going to be much more likely that over the period of 2 meals, you're going to eat less calories. So the first reason that fasting actually works is that you eat less calories overall. The second reason, which I'm not going to go into too much detail, is that fasting actually improves the way your hormones respond to the food and exercise you actually do. By decreasing things like insulin and increasing things like growth hormone, in the long term, you can train your body's hormones to actually react better and more positively to the way you eat and exercise to help manage your weight. The third one really comes down to calorie timing, and I think for me this is the one that makes the most amount of sense. And the analogy that I've got for you, I like to talk about taxis, strangely. So you have taxis that are fitted with LPG gas. And the majority of these taxis drive around on LPG gas. I want you to think about LPG gas being like carbohydrate. Now, in the body, the only time that you would actually switch to burning fat was if your body fuels of carbohydrate or blood glucose got low enough that you could actually churn into eating that fat away from your body, the fat stores. Well, in the same way as a taxi, once a taxi goes through its LPG stores or fuels, it will then go back to using its backup unleaded source. So if you think of it that way, the only way that you can actually get to using your fat sources is if you deplete your LPG sources first. So when you're fasting, you're effectively burning away all of your LPG, all of your blood glucose, and stored glycogen, which is the stored form of carbohydrate. So your body has no other option but then to use its fat supplies. So of course, if you're going for a long fast and you effectively deplete all of your LPG, you're gonna have to cut into those body fat supplies. And that's where the true benefit of fasting comes in. So with all this talk of fasting, what do I do? What are my recommendations? Okay, I'm gonna give you the exact idea of how I eat, the patterning I eat and drink, and for that matter, how effective it's been for me. And I've been fasting now for around about 18 to 24 months. And since discovering this concept, I can't really see a scenario where I would go back to doing it the old way, the 6 meals a day way. Now, here's how I start. So I would wake up in the morning, usually about 5 o'clock on a weekday, and I would come right through. The first thing I would do when I get to work is to have a black coffee, and I like to do that because it wakes me up. At the same time, I'm drinking loads and loads and loads of plain water, maybe just a twist of lemon, but not too much more. I will not eat a single thing until midday, and at midday, I have my first meal, okay? So between 5 o'clock and midday, I'm effectively extending my fast from around 8:30 the previous night right through to midday. Now, if you think of that using the analogy that I've given you, that means that my taxi is running around on LPG while I'm sleeping, and it eventually runs out of LPG and it now needs to burn into my unleaded fuel source, my backup fuel supply. And you know what? I can actually feel when I'm sitting there in my chair through the day, I can actually feel it's a strange thing, almost as if the fat is peeling off your body. I don't want to make it sound like a silver bullet, but it really does feel like you're cutting into your own fat stores in real time. You can actually feel it. Now, in between the hours of 5 o'clock and midday, I would not recommend having any calorie-containing beverages. So what does that leave you with? Well, that leaves you with black coffee, that leaves you with unflavored tea, so greens or black teas with no milk or anything added, and of course water. So that's what you smash up during that period. Now, everything on from that point is not a diet, it's normal eating for the rest of the day. In fact, I'll go for a couple of bananas, followed by maybe a protein bar. I'd go back to chicken stir fry or whatever, and whatever you normally eat for dinner. In fact, I want to avoid giving you any form of recommendations because remember, fasting is not about telling you what to eat, it's about telling you when to eat. And the key concept is that it's that period there between when you go to bed the prior night and when you, say midday kickoff, when you decide to start eating again. Now, there are many, many different protocols and you don't need to necessarily follow. In fact, you can start by just choosing your own protocol. For example, if you work night shift, then that's going to be completely the opposite way around. And a really big tip here. On the weekends, I go back to eating as normal. And the reason I do that is to avoid something called the famine response. And what that is where your body thinks that you're trying to starve it on an ongoing basis, so starts to down-regulate processes like your libido and really drops your metabolism. So think of it this way. You fast through the week, and then at the weekend, you get to treat yourself, and that becomes a way for you to reset your body's fasting and make it think that, hey, no, everything's good. I find that that is the best protocol to work for me. So the final question is, should you fast? Well, look, there's a few people that definitely should not be fasting. So people like pregnant women and certainly diabetics would want to definitely consider speaking to their doctor before any type of fasting because it's away from what is regular, normal living, okay, or dietary advice. A lot of people think of fasting as almost a life hack. And why is that? And I tend to agree with it. Why is that? Because the cool thing about fasting is it makes everything simple. If weight management has always been a problem for you, then I'd definitely suggest giving it a go. Now, if you're like me and you wake up at 5 or 6 o'clock, you don't have to go right through to midday. Why not try just not eating till say 9 o'clock? And as you get better and better and better, and you do start to see results and the fat starting to come away, then you can start to extend out if you really do want to. So for the general population, I really do recommend it. In fact, I've had loads of my mates that actually followed the advice on actually starting to do fasting, and the results they get almost instantly are tremendous. And you'll start to see that over the first week, the initial fast is pretty difficult to adjust to, right? It's pretty difficult to adjust because you get the hunger pains, and that's why the black coffee or the green tea is so good, because it blunts those hunger pains. But after the second and third week, things start to really become a lot easier and you start to adapt to that style of eating. And a really strange byproduct of fasting that I find is that a little bit of that brain fogginess that you have in the morning tends to go away. I actually feel I have more clarity in my thinking in the earlier part of the day. So yeah, something to think about, guys. And I really do recommend that fasting is something that can really, really help to supercharge your fat loss, but it must be combined with a proper exercise program. Just not eating doesn't work. You're just going to starve yourself, okay? So that's the advice on fasting. Please, guys, subscribe, share this video with your mates. It really, really helps more than you know. My aim has always been trying to get you guys free advice so you can get out there and make practical changes to help you live a better and more beautiful life. So thanks, guys. Like, comment below, and I'll see you guys on the next video.